Cloudcast Media. Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and we are truly honored to have an American hero in our midst. I'm also honored to call him friend and colleague, and that is Jim Bedinger, United States Navy retired, and the author of Patriot, Prisoner, Survivor, An American Family at War. Jim, thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me, Drew.
Absolutely an honor. And joining me is my guest, co-host, Kamara White. We call her a curiosity shipper. We don't call them internships. We call them curiosity ships where they learn the business. Kamara is a volleyball star. She's going to St. Martin's College on a volleyball scholarship next fall, or this upcoming fall, I should say, and she'll be majoring in communications. How you doing, Kamara?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Yeah, we got a real hero with us, and I know you got a question for Jim.
Yeah, so just talk about how you support the military and the amazing groups that you're involved with.
Oh, that's a great question. First and foremost, when I retired on active duty at the time, you could not join the Navy League of the United States. So the day I retired, and I was still actually, you retire and you go on what they call leave, and depending how much leave you have on the books, and then everything's done, and you just go out and start working for another company or whatever. And I had a friend who said, "Okay, you got to come to the Navy League meeting. You're going to be my guest, but bring your checkbook because we're going to sign you up." So I became a citizen for the sea services actually before I left active duty, because I had a month to go of active duty pay. And the Navy League, of course, is Citizens for the Sea Services, and tried to make Americans realize that America still lies where the oceans meet. And no people ever reached our shores without crossing an ocean some way or another, whether it was on an ice floe or a ship or in an airplane. We lie where the oceans meet. And we need strong sea services, including not just the Navy, but the Coast Guard, the Merchant Marine, and what is often forgotten, the Marine Corps, which is part of the Navy,
right?
And the strong industrial base that supports shipbuilding, ship repairs, and making sure the fleet is ready to go at a moment's notice. So that was the first organization I joined, and I'm still in there, mainly because I got signed up as a life member about 20 years ago.
Well, listen, you got a lot more life to. Given that, I know you're also involved with the San Diego Military Advisory Council and Fleet Week Foundation and so forth.
Yeah, and Fleet Week and the San Diego MAC were created when I was still working at the USA Federal Credit Union, and they were very important. Both of those were one spun out of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, Military Affairs Committee, and the kind of thing that they tried to do that fell apart, and it lacked a lot of company support, estranged from the Chamber of Commerce. But back then, the companies that supported the chamber, probably much like today, were real estate developers and big banks, and the military back then didn't do a lot of business with real estate. But the other group I support is the Warrior Foundation Freedom Station, and that was founded here, and it's really for San Diego, but its outreach has now gone as far as Hawaii and the East Coast. And they're the group that does a radiothon, and just before Christmas, to send every wounded warrior who's at Balboa Hospital or in waiting for his medical retirement and board to finalize, and they send them home so that on Christmas morning they can wake up in their own homes with their own families. And that got started years ago, at around 2004. And the radio host and the radio station didn't want to be part of handling money and had to be a not-for-profit. At the time, I was the president of the Council of the Navy League. And I heard on the air, driving to work at the credit union, that, hey, write your check out to the San Diego Navy League. And then in the memo thing, say for Warrior Foundation. And I said, what? And wait a minute. And so we had to scramble and make things up, and that worked out. It did. So and they've grown a long way. And then the Warrior Foundation finally wanted to buy real estate so they could have a place where an apartment complex where injured warriors, when they get released from the hospital, and maybe they have another month or so to get paid, and then they have to get their retirement pay type thing set up. And it's a period of transition. So we wanted to have a transitional thing where the warriors who are injured can have their own little unit, but then go out and barbecue with their fellow injured warriors and then talk to. And the new guy, it's just like in a squadron. You got the new guys and you got the old guys. And the old guys can help the new guys. And that kind of talking really started to do a bond. So that developed. And when they got enough money, they were able to put a big package together. And then they got their own 501c3 not-for-profit number from the IRS and all the rest. And it took a little while, but we got it. And once they got that, then they took the Warrior Foundation part of Navy League and transferred it over to the new group, which they had called Freedom Station. So today it's Warrior Foundation Freedom Station.
Very, very good. We're chatting with Jim Bedinger, U.S. Navy retired, author of Patriot, Prisoner, Survivor, and American Family at War. We're going to chat about that in a few seconds. I'm Drew Schlosberg, and you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlossberg's Spotlight on the Community Show. It's the nation's longest-running community podcast. We're now in our 17th year, joined by my guest co-host, Kamara White, in this beautiful Mission-Fed studio here in Scripps Ranch in Mission-Fed. Has been doing wonderful things in the community for more than 60 years. So, Jim, what's the book about? Patriot, Prisoner, Survivor, and American Family at War. What's it about?
It's about, my family and why I wanted to be part of the military in this age because of my ancestors and some of the things they've done. I'm a direct descendant of Daniel Bedinger, who at the age of 15 took an extra horse and followed his two older brothers and the contingent from Shepherdstown, West Virginia today, which was just Virginia back then. And in the northern Arapahoe Mountains of New Jersey, they spotted him because he was suspicious with a horse behind him. And he was captured and brought into the camp. And his brother was very upset with him. And the next older brother, he had two older brothers, but they made him a private, and then they realized that he was a very good shot with a long rifle. And so they made him, as a private, become like a sniper, what was back then a sniper. And in the battle for New York City, there were three battles mainly. He helped on a foggy morning, the whole Continental Army escape into Manhattan from Brooklyn Heights, and he was wounded, a very small wound there, and they were fighting in the rear guard. And then they had another battle in mid-Manhattan, and the last battle was at the north end at Fort Washington. And there a bullet grazed his head, again, fighting in the rear guard, and he was captured, as were his two brothers. But they were officers, so they went to Long Island. He went to a prisoner of war ship in the Hudson River where he contracted malaria and was bitten by a few rats. And then he was transported to another prisoner of war ship that was stuck in the mud in Newark, New Jersey. And after several months of pretty harsh treatment, no real diet, and he succumbed to malaria, great loss of weight. And they said, this kid's going to die. Let's just get him in the next prisoner of war exchange, which they did. He was taken to Philadelphia and then transported out. And his younger brother came, or his older brother came, George, the next oldest, came looking for him. And he was about ready to give up. And a Pennsylvania Dutch person who was a nurse at the Center City area, he was asking about his brother and where he might be. And he says, well, does he still speak a little of the old Dutch? And he says, well, he speaks a little of the Dutch and French too, because where the original family had come from was in the Alsace-Lorraine area of Europe. In any case, he went up to Germantown of this thing, and he was getting discouraged, and he got to the very top floor, the third story of the parish building, and he's going, Private Daniel Bedinger, Private Daniel Bedinger. Echoes the sound of silence. And finally, out from a pile of straw, he hears his voice saying, is that you, Georgie? And he found his brother. He couldn't walk. He couldn't even stand up. And he weighed less than 100 pounds. And they put him on a chair and strapped him in. And then George put that on like a knapsack. And they started west. And somewhere in the western part of Philadelphia, they found a Quaker family. And they stayed with that family for about a month, nursing him and all the rest. And then they walked further on to the York, Pennsylvania, which was the original family, Adam Bedinger. That's where they had settled. And then from there, he finally got home, and it took him almost a year. But as soon as he was back to health, he was off to join the Army again. And when he joined the Army, he was commissioned, backdated to his date of capture, a lieutenant in the Continental Army.
Wow.
And to this day, the Virginia Society of Cincinnati records him as the youngest commissioned officer in the Continental Army.
Wow. So let me ask you this, Jim, and I'll let you get it started, and then we'll take a quick break on it here. So obviously prisoner of war resonates with you. You were a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War, correct?
Correct.
And you were at the Hanoi Hilton, were you not?
That was one of my stays, yes.
Right. And how long were you at the Hanoi Hilton?
Well, I got there in December of 1969, and we were there for a year and 3 months, and then we were moved out to a very distant camp when we had the Songfest riot. All the prisoners started singing God Bless America. And it was such a loud thing coming from all these prisoners, which had been all brought into the central prison. Most of the prisoners were put in the large cells at Christmas 1970, and we were left in the old camp for a couple weeks before we were brought over and put in 2 cells at the end of a hallway, isolated from everybody else, because we'd been captured in Laos. So they tried to keep us separated from those captured in North Vietnam or South Vietnam. And we were there for about 5 months, and then they brought us back into Hanoi, where we stayed for the next year at the plantation prison. And then as the bombing started in December of 1972, before the Christmas break, they had us dig a hole in our cell. And you went through the brick and the other things, and then there was dirt and fill. And we built the bomb shelter, and then the next day they came in and moved us back to the Wallow prison, which it's kind of funny. We built the bomb shelter, and then the communists used the bomb shelter. But from that viewpoint, we saw a lot of the air battle for Hanoi,
right.
And we had across the street from where the cell was, there was a 155 millimeter anti-aircraft gun. That's like what they had on the battleships, 16-inch gun type of thing. So when they fire that, old physics in high school, for every reaction there's an equal and opposite reaction, and it hits the ground. So the first time they fired that, Ernie was standing on the bucket looking through a peephole in the door, and the door moved at least 4 or 5 inches. It hit him in the head. He got a bruise in his head. So the door and the plaster came off the ceiling and all the rest. So we were the sights and sounds, at least, of the war.
Right.
And I think the hardest part in that thing was the knowing when you saw the SAM explode. There's a big warhead. The Russians, that's their technique in anti-war air warfare. They always went for the biggest bang. And the explosion, and then the secondary explosion sometimes in the airplane because of the fuel tanks. And then the ejection seats come out, and it's a dark night, and there's nothing, no lights are on except the lights sometimes that were inside our cells. They stayed on during the bombing. But you see this little, just a little, and that's the ejection seat with the rocket motor coming out of it. And seeing several B-52s shot down literally like that, my heart just went out to every man up there because we know they were up there because we were down there.
Right. We're talking to Jim Bedinger. He is a U.S. Navy retired, author of Patriot, Prisoner, Survivor, and American Family at War. Talks about his family's service in the war. When we come back from break, I know Kamara's got a question for you on some things that helped you as a POW when you were at Hanoi Hilton and some of the other prisons as war. As we return from a break from Drew Schlosberg, Spotlight on the Community Show. It's the nation's longest running community podcast, now in its 17th year in the beautiful Mission Fed studio and Scripps Ranch. And Mission Fed's been doing wonderful work in San Diego for more than 60 years. We will be right back.
When you do your banking with Mission Fed, you get great rates on auto and home loans. That's good for you, but something good also happens for a lot of other people. We're not for profit, so we put money back into the community to help lots of great nonprofits to keep San Diego strong. So you're not just getting something good, you're doing something good. Come to Mission Fed. It's banking that's good for all.
Brand amplification is the DNA of Cloudcast Media, and our code is the powerful blending of sound, voice, and storytelling to lift local brands and their communities. Whether it is our Brandcast, Schoolcast, or Causecast platforms, the unifying ethos is all about this community, the one you call home. If you dare to dream and want to explore the brand amplification of Cloudcast, a national leader in local podcasting and other Winfluence strategies, please visit us at cloudcast.us.
I'm Drew Schlosberg of Cloudcast Media, and you're listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest running community podcast. We're now in our 17th year. We're broadcasting from the beautiful Mission Fed studio in Scripps Ranch. Mission Fed Credit Union just been doing great things in San Diego for more than 60 years. We are joined by a true American hero, Jim Bedinger, a U.S. Navy retired and the author of Patriot, Prisoner, Survivor, and American Family at War. Jim was a prisoner of war during the Vietnam. They are joined by my guest co-host, Kamara White. She'll be a journalism major, communications major at St. Martin's College beginning this fall on a volleyball scholarship. Kamara?
Yeah, so you talked about a little bit of your experience during that time in the Vietnam War, but what were some things that helped you during that time as a prisoner of war?
Well, first of all, there are three things that I always say in some of my speeches is I had three faiths. Faith is a really important thing. When everything else is taken away from you, you still have your faith, and that can't be taken away from you unless you give it up. And I had a faith in God, a faith in my country and our way of life, and faith in my fellow prisoners of war and my friends and family at home. So those three faiths really were strong things that helped me overcome some of the vicissitudes of captivity, particularly the heat rash, which covered me from my waist into my scalp. And but I think the other thing is the structural things that helped us. It doesn't get spoken or written about that much. But after the Korean War and the POW experience, then our country adopted through an executive order by President Eisenhower a moral code of conduct. That's the American Warrior's Creed. And that code of conduct was very important because it was a structure from which whoever was senior and took charge would have that as sort of like a guideline. I'll give no oral or written statement against my country or our allies, and will resist to the utmost of my ability. And I think that key last phrase, to the utmost of my ability, and that's a different threshold for different people. So the code of conduct was very important. And I think what was also important was the quality of the people that stepped up who may not been the most senior person, but that senior person wasn't physically, mentally, or whatever else able to take a leadership role. And they took their places. And as we say back in RA, we have this kind of little saying that rank has its privileges. Well, our RHP in the Hanoi Hilton's rank has its pain because they were punished more severely and watched more closely. And we had people like Admiral Stockdale and Admiral Bill Lawrence. They weren't admirals then, commanders. Right. And Bill Lawrence and Chuck Gillespie. And in the Air Force, we had Robbie Reisner and several others. And we had a Navy guy who lived here in San Diego, has passed away years ago, is Chuck Gillespie. And they were really tough, and they were fine examples. And as I think about people like John McCain, who was right next door to us on that first jail cell, and then on the other side was Admiral Stockdale. And it was CAG. And John kept wanting to get the sports, and it's the first night. And Ernie is saying, John, well, do it. It's dark outside where the guards are, and it's light inside. So we're putting your ear to the wall. You're going to get caught pretty quickly because you can't hide. And he's trying to tell him, pipe down. You're going to get us caught. Look, I've waited 4.5 years to get a room. I don't want to lose him on the first night. Finally, at 2:00 in the morning, he could always tell what time it was because we could hear the bells from the cathedral. And on the hour, it rang with the time. So it was 2:00. Dong, dong. Okay, tell me how the AFL and the is the AFL and the NFL going to get together and combine? And of course, Ernie was about ready to say something, and a tired old voice on the other side comes up and says, McCain, go to sleep. That's an order.
That's funny.
And the only answer was, aye, CAG. And we never heard another word from him the rest of the night. So having those two people, I mean, it's hard for a JG in the Navy to go wrong when you got leadership like that. So the code of conduct, leadership, and how they applied the rules. And then I think the third factor that was really important was no matter how hard they tried, they could not stop us from communicating with our fellow prisoners of war. We had the tap code. We had variations of it. We had a flash code. We had a vocal tap code. We wrote notes and kept them hidden in places, like in the washroom, buried under a brick. Our first note drop when we were in the plantation, came back from the outer country, was a note drop, and our sign on the brick was the sign of the old ancient Christian fish. It's just one looping, and that was the fish. And I always got a kick out of that because it was our communication to the other prisoners in the camp. But communication was important, and tap code was very important. And I had the darndest time trying to remember AFLQV. Ernie finally told me the Marine way to remember it. The Air Force loves queer virgins.
Oh my goodness!
And of course, in the book, we didn't put that in there. We put inter-service rivalry. Basically.
Oh, that is funny. So Jim, how do people get the book?
Well, it's available on Amazon online and Barnes & Noble online, and it's available in Aztec shops. They may not have it on the shelf, but they can order it and have it in a week.
Right.
Amazon is an interesting thing because if you're an Amazon member and you have Prime or whatever, you don't have to pay for the shipping and all the rest. So it's a good, and it's in this is what they call a laminated case covering,
right?
And then it's in a hardback, and the hardback's about $30, and this is about $21.50.
Right, again, and it's called Patriot, Prisoner, Survivor, and American Family at War. Well, thank you for sharing these stories. Listen, we could have gone on for another 4 hours, to be honest with you, on this.
I talk too much.
No, not at all. Are you kidding me? These are important stories to hear and so forth. But I think we've sort of whetted the appetite, Kamara, of our listeners. So go ahead, and if people want to get a hold of you, Jim, and just want to chat with you, not that we want to give out too much personal information, can they do that? Or should they go through the San Diego Military Advisory Council and maybe give them a call and say, hey, I heard Jim on the Drew Spotlight show and would love to have him speak to a group? I'm making this up, so I'm going along.
Yeah. Any of the organizations I belong to, the San Diego MAC, Larry Blumberg and Fleet Week,
okay,
and the Ed, the Navy League, he's the president,
sure.
Ernie Bellamars, but the Navy League, San Diego Council Navy League, I usually go to their monthly breakfast meetings.
All right, so why don't we do this? Again, look up the San Diego Military Advisory Council or Fleet Week San Diego or Navy League. Get in touch with their personnel there. Say you heard Jim speak on the Spotlight and the Community Show and would love to get a message out to them, and then they'll be in touch with you. Jim, thank you so much for joining us. Yes, one more thing.
If all else fails, you can always notify Montezuma Publishing at San Diego State, and their office will take your number or your email, and they will forward it to me, and then I can contact you.
That sounds very good. That Montezuma Publishing, is that correct?
Yes.
Jim, again, thank you for your service. Thank you for your honor. Thank you for your bravery. Thank you personally for being my friend and colleague. And I just can't thank you enough for giving your time. And Kamara, I know you enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet. You've been listening to another edition of Drew Schlosberg Spotlight on the Community Show, the nation's longest-running community podcast. We are now in our 17th year here from Mission Fed Studios and Scripps Ranch. Mission Fed Credit Union continues to do terrific things for San Diegans for more than 60 years. We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to an episode of Drew Schlosberg's Spotlight on the Community Show, amplifying the voices of social impact organizations, entrepreneurs, local nonprofits, and other community champions who shape the culture, creativity, and connectivity of San Diego community. Brought to you by Mission Fed Credit Union, bringing good things to San Diego for over 60 years. Learn more about what is good for you and good for all by visiting www.missionfed.com.
Cloudcast Media.